Okay, let's just start it. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the first inaugural webinar series sponsored by IUSM Center for Electron Microscopy. My name is Yu Takagi, Associate Professor at the Biochemistry Department, also Technical and Scientific Director for the EM Core. Some of you know that IU School of Medicine recently has acquired Glaciers cryo-electron microscopy from Thermo Fisher Scientific through my NIH high-end instrumentation grant funding, as well as the generous contribution from Dean's Office and the Biochemistry Department. The scope is currently in the process of installations. We hope that it will be operational soon. I'm sure that many of you are interested in what this Cryo-EM can do to enhance your research project and the grant funding. Today, we invited Dr. Debao, the expert in the Cryo-EM field, and she will tell us how Cryo-EM can contribute to your research endeavor. Let me introduce Dr. Natalia Debao from Thermo Fisher Scientific. Dr. Debao has more than 12 years of experience in a single particle cryo-electron microscopy, as well as immunogenic design for vaccine development. She received her PhD in biochemistry from the University of Leuven in Belgium, followed by her postdoctoral work at UC Berkeley, as well as Pasteur Institute. From year 2012 to 16, she worked at Swiss Research Institute. There, she played a key role in groundbreaking studies defining the structure of the HIV-1 envelope glycoprotein complex bound to neutralizing antibodies. This work used Cryo-EM to provide important structural insight into HIV-1 envelope glycoprotein. During this time, she continued to the structural analysis of Ebola virus glycoprotein as well. After her work on Scripps, she served as principal scientist at the Nanoimaging Service Incorporated, funded by Dr. Brigitte Carragher, who I consider to be a godmother of the Cryo-EM, where she led the Cryo-EM study for numerous clients, including many pharmaceutical industries. In October 2017, she joined the National Cancer Institute as the director of the electron microscopy laboratory and team leader for the cryo-electron microscopy section at the Center for Molecular Microscopy. There, she was responsible for the management of wide portfolio for projects related mainly to the cancer and HIV diseases. Then January this year, she joined Thermo Fisher Scientific as a senior scientist and the product specialist for electron microscopy. In her current position, she is supporting electron microscopes in the East Coast, Midwest in the US. She has also over 60 scientific publications, including many high-impact journals, such as Science and Nature. Thank you, Natalia, for coming. Again, she will tell us how Cryo-EM can contribute to our research.
Your video, it seems. Okay, I think it's going to be disappearing, maybe, I hope. So again, thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk to you about, what Cryo-EM and how Cryo-EM can help you to understand, structural biology and structure in general. So this is the agenda for today. So I will be talking a tiny bit about differences in between single particle analysis and tomography. And I know the audience here are expert users versus new people doing electron microscopy. So I want to put everyone on the same page, like everyone can understand the differences in between those techniques. I will focus mostly today on single particle analysis for micromolecular complexes. And I would like to compare as well the difference in between the Cryo-EM TEM portfolio like Thermo Fisher has to offer. So between Tundra, Glaciers, and Cryogenesis. I will focus mostly on Glaciers and his capabilities for MicroED, for example, and the selective, the energy filter. And I will show you, obviously, because everyone here in the audience wants to see results and wants to see what can be obtained with the Glaciers Selectris Falcon 4 and the Cryos Falcon 4 and Selectris as well. I know people in the audience are working on SBDD as well as antibody-based therapeutics, and I will try to show you how Cryo-EM in particular can help you with that technology and in that regard. And obviously, we have questions and answers sessions. And again, I want this to be very open. So please, you feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions here in the audience or in the Zoom meeting. Please go ahead. So with that being said, I would like to start, sharing with you the differences between single particle analysis and tomography. So the main differences is like single particle, you are working with proteins in solution. So you are working with a recombinant protein. Could be an antigen bound to an antibody, could be a micromolecular complex, membrane proteins, etc. So you vitrify those proteins into an electron microscopic grid, and you go to the scope and you start collecting data. So this is a typical micrograph you will be able to obtain with the TEM scope. Those are particles of interest in different orientations. So to be successful, to be the maximum resolution you can get for the 3D or to generate a 3D volume, the more orientations of the particles you have, the better. Because otherwise you have the thing that we call preferred orientation problems. So in this particular example, we are having and collecting data, and the more orientations, top bottom views, side views, and in between, you can create, computationally speaking, 2D projections or 2D classes, like after you can use to generate your 3D volume. So again, I want to highlight to being able or to have a high resolution of the 3D volume of the particle of interest, you need to get as much orientation as possible. The more, the merrier. So with this technology, single particle analysis, you will be able to obtain high resolution. With the instruments nowadays, you can reach atomic resolution, so very close to crystallography. The tomography is another different matter because the difference is like you are working, for example, with virus in solution, or you are working with proteins in situ. So that means you are working on the cell directly or with tissues. So the way you, I will say, vitrify the sample is similar to the way for single particle analysis, but the way you collect the sample in the scope is very different. So you need to be able to do a tilt series in the scope. So you will be able to collect data from minus 60 or 70 degrees to plus 60 or 70 degrees in the scope and in between. So all those data that you are collecting with tilt angles generate a movie or series of tilt, and we call that, if you put all those movies, all those tilt series together to create or generate this tomogram. And this is a typical tomogram you will get. In this particular example, you will see is a virus. So again, the way you analyze the tomograms is quite different to the way you analyze a single particle analysis. And the resolutions you will be able to reach, they are a bit different. Right now, nowadays, with tomography, you can reach around 3 to 4 angstrom resolution. So those are the limits we have right now in tomography. But again, huge differences. Single particle analysis is for proteins in solutions, recombinant protein and micromolecular complexes. Tomography is for a work in situ, so organelles, tissues, or cells. As I said before, we'll focus mostly today on the single particle analysis workflow. So this is the typical workflow you will be, already probably used to do in this group. So you will need to start with a biochemical sample preparation, and I want to highlight how important it is to have a very good sample. If you have a bad sample, can be heterogeneous, can be aggregation, can be flexibility, that can be very challenging. Even if you go to the better scope nowadays, like it's the Titan Cryos, you won't be able to reach atomic resolution. So it's very, very important to keep this in mind. Like biochemistry, even right now, nowadays, with all the computational and all the instrumentation development, is still the basics for everything. That is very important. So once you have your good sample, you will go with sample vitrification, and for that you can use the VitroBot and you can use other branches, whatever is the easiest for you. You will use the Tundra, and I will explain a tiny bit what is the Tundra later on. It's the latest TEM microscope, like we launched less than a year ago in November 2020, and it's mostly for sample optimization and screening purposes. And it's a dedicated SPA microscope. So once you screen the grids in the Tundra, for example, you will be able to localize the best grid that you will be able to retrieve and use for high resolution imaging in the glaciers or in the tracks. And after that, after all the data collection, you will be able to do image processing using Relion, CryoSpark, whatever software package you want to use. So the portfolio that Cryo-EM and Thermo Fisher is offering right now, you are already very familiar with those, is the Cryos, the 300 3D microscope with autoloader. So you can load 12 different grids at the same time, and it's very powerful and productive. So if you combine the Cryos with the energy filter selectives and the Falcon 4 camera, you can reach right now atomic resolution. And I will show you data later on in the presentation. The apoferritin right now with the Cryo selective Falcon 4 is at 1.22 angstrom. So we are really talking about atomic resolution. Below 1.5 is already atomic, so it's very exciting. The Glaciers, the one you have here, and I was very happy to see the installation going on quite smoothly. So I was able to visit that this morning. It's working very well. So it's a 200 3D microscope. You have as well an autoloader, so you can load 12 different grids at the same time, and it's very capable and versatile. You can do MicroEM, you can do a single particle analysis, and even tomography in the Glaciers. And the Tundra is a 100 3D microscope with big spec, and it's solely dedicated to single particle analysis. So let's compare it more into details, Glaciers versus Tundra, because who knows, maybe in the near future, we will have more scopes here, and it's the only thing I hope for you guys. So maybe the Tundra can be something to think about. So the Glaciers, as I said before, is very versatile. You can get customize the detector, the filters, face plates, and you can use the Glaciers for single particle, tomography, and MicroEM. The Tundra is only dedicated for single particle analysis, entry-level microscope. With the Glaciers, the ultimate resolution that we publish is like 1.75. So it's a very, very good resolution coming from a 200 kilovolt microscope. And the Tundra, the resolution is not bad at all for a 100 TD. So it's around 3 angstrom reconstructions right now. Again, the Glaciers, you can load 12 grids at the same time versus the Tundra is only 1 grid at a time. So it's not a side entry holder, it's much easier to use, but it's only 1 grid in the stage. We don't have autoloader in the Tundra. So yeah, so the time is mostly the capabilities with APHIS. So we already have APHIS in the Tundra right now, but when we collect data for that particular sample, we didn't have APHIS in the Tundra. So that's the reason you can see, well, first of all, the optics are very different, the camera is different. So in this particular example, we are using the Falcon 4 versus a CMOS camera, so it's less faster, plus you don't have the APHIS in this particular example. So APHIS plus camera plus optics can improve a lot the throughput, you know, the speed you will collect data. Yeah, totally. Good question. Glaciers versus Cryos. Again, resolution for Cryos, as I said before, 1.22 with apoferritin, Cryos, energy filter, and Falcon 4. And obviously, we have much more publications with the Cryos, not because it's a better scope. For some purposes, it's better, obviously, but it's because the Cryos, the first generation, was launched in 2007, versus the Glaciers and Arctica is much later on. So that's the reason you can see some differences in the publications. High productivity versus ultimate productivity for the Cryos. So let's go with the Glaciers, because I think it's very important for you guys to understand what can be done with the machine you have here in-house. So this is the machine you have in-house. It's very, ideal home source for Cryo-EM, immediate applications for support to train new users, very easy to use, etc. So I would like to go from more details. So we have, as I said before, we have the auto grids. Those grids are a clip, and you can go directly to the cassette. And this is a typical cassette you can see here. You can see 12 different grids, 12 different slots in there. And you can load those grids directly into the Glaciers with the autoloader, and you will be able to screen them and decide which one is the best to go for data collection. So it's very convenient to use. This is very interesting to see, the install base of Cryogenesis versus Glaciers versus Arctica. So for example, in Europe, we have a majority of Cryos and Arctica's Glaciers in, Germany, the Netherlands, a lot in the UK. We have only one in my country, in Spain. We have only one article in Madrid. I'm very sad to see that. But, you know, it's the way it is right now. Yeah, it's very depressing. So I'm trying to push in those Spanish guys to have more cryo instruments. In the USA, you can see the majority of the cryogenesis articles are very, very concentrated in the West Coast and the East Coast. We are starting to have all those instruments coming in the Midwest. So I'm very happy, guys, you are part of the cryo community right now because it's very, very exciting. And obviously, we have big clusters of cryogenesis mostly, and some glaciers in China, mostly in Beijing. They have, I think, 10 cryogenesis in there, so a lot. So again, you are not alone. Everyone is using those instruments, and they are very, very happy. So the Glaciers is designed with connectivity in mind. What this means. So you can use the bit robot to freeze the samples. You can go to the Glaciers to do sample optimization, screening, and data collection. And if you need to push the resolution even higher than the Glaciers, you can get access to cryos, for example, in Purdue. We have cryos there, so you can collect data with the same grid. So in between the tundra, if you have the tundra one day, the Glaciers and the cryos are all working with auto grids. Okay, so that means that you can retrieve the same grid from the Glacier in here, the same exact grid without almost noise contamination, and go to the cryos in Purdue, no problem. So that's the reason we create all this connection between the scopes, because it's one vendor, one shop, no worry. So it's easy for you guys. So what other things you can do with this guy, with the Glaciers? So obviously you can do single particle analysis. And another thing I want to emphasize, you can do MicroEM. And you can even upgrade the Glaciers if you want at some point with a selective energy filter. So let's go a tiny bit more in details how those different techniques, you know, are able to complement each other. And this is a typo. This is not Cryo-EM. This is MicroEM complements traditional structural biology techniques. My apologies. So you can see tomography is mostly for, you know, kind of bigger or big samples, okay, in between 500 kilodalton and over. And the resolution you can reach nowadays is around 3.5 angstroms to 10 angstroms, okay? So it's already very good, and it's all in situ work. Single particle analysis, as I say, we are getting better and better. So we are getting with a smaller and smaller proteins nowadays. So below 60 kilodalton can be done. And you know, the resolutions are 1.2, 1.5 to 4 angstroms, okay? So you can see those techniques are a bit overlapping with MicroEM, regular crystallography, and even NMR. So NMR, as you know, is for small molecules, and the resolutions are very high, usually between 2 and 5. And crystallography resolutions, again, very, very high. And the size could be small molecules, 20 kilodalton to maybe 200. More than 200, it's going to be difficult to crystallize that micromolecular complex. So again, differences in between those guys, cryo-electron tomography, whole cells, organelles, biomolecules in their native context. So this is very cool when you want to see what is going on of your protein of interest in the native context. This is very important. Single particle analysis, purify a protein and complexes, for example, antigen, antibody, those are very cool. 2D electron diffraction, I don't want to talk about this at all today, but if you have any questions, please let me know. And of course, MicroEM, it's a mix in between crystallography and electron microscopy, because you still need to have crystals, but they are very, very tiny. You don't need to wait to have a 5-micron crystal to be able to go to the synchrotron and have some diffraction. So you can already do this directly with very, very tiny crystals. And we are talking about 200 to 700 nanometers. So it's very impressive. And you can get very highest resolution. So you will ask me, which are the advantages or differences between regular crystallography versus XFEL versus MicroEM? So main differences here. For synchrotron regular crystallography, you need to have a large crystal. Minimum, I would say 5 microns. If it's not 5 microns, it's not gonna work. So, and you need to get a fair amount of crystals to be able to get a good resolution. For example, for the granulin, and I will show you examples later, you will need to collect 21 crystals to get 1.7 angstrom resolution. For the X-FEL, you can use small crystals, so similar to MicroED, but you need tons of them. For example, for granulin, to get a transform resolution, you need more than 80K crystals. So it's crazy. And you know, access to the X-FEL is expensive, and the access is sometimes difficult. So it's not very convenient. MicroED, you can use the same scope than the Glaciers here to do SPA and to do MicroED. So it's 2-in-1 solution in-house. You don't need to go to any synchrotron or anywhere. You can do everything in-house. So provides high resolution, as I said before, it's very fast. You can use small crystals, and you need very few crystals. Usually, on average, between 4 to 5 crystals are enough to get a 3D reconstruction of the compound or protein of interest. So it's very cool. So let me show you how it works. This is the typical workflow for MicroED. So once you have, for example, a small compound, I know the majority of the people right now doing MicroED are using it for small compounds, but some people, as Samir Bonen, because he was the guy like, you know, create the technique, they are already promoting this technique for much more than only small compounds, for micromolecular complexes too. So once you have your crystals, you will need to mill those crystals or to sonicate those crystals without heating them to make them quite small, in between 100 to 700 nanometers. And you want to have a very homogeneous you know, sample of crystals. Once you have that, you will be able to beautify those crystals into a typical EM grid. Can be a C-flat, can be a quantifoil, can be a graphene grid, whatever you want to choose. So once you have that, you will be able to go to the scope under refraction mode, and you will be able to localize those crystals. Once the crystal is localized, you will need to do some diffraction screening to see if you have some diffraction spots. And if that's the case, you can see some diffraction spots. You will be able to do diffraction till series data collection. And this is a video you can see. On continuous tilt in the stage, you will be able to do and collect data in the crystal. One crystal takes only 3 minutes to collect the data on. Usually, as I said before, you only need 5 crystals on average for the same protein of interest to have all the data you need to do the phasing and the refinement. So again, very fast and very quick.
Is there a requirement for spatial separation of the crystal?
So yeah, very good question. I will recommend to avoid sometimes, you know, because when you put the crystals in the grid, some areas can be very crowded with plenty of crystals overlapping. Don't use those areas. I will recommend to use the areas, and in this particular example, where you have probably 1 crystal or 2 crystals quite isolated. You know, because if they are overlapping, if you are collecting data in one of the crystals, the other crystal you cannot use anymore because it's gonna be already the beam will kill the other crystal very close to the first one you are collecting data on. That makes sense? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Same settings, we don't change it in the microscope. Doesn't take over.
No, so be careful with that. You need to work under diffraction mode. For all this work for MicroED is diffraction mode. So it's totally different with the TEM mode you will be using for single particle analysis or tomography. So you need to change a diffraction mode. And you need to have a specific package that we call the MicroED package. Like it's a special camera with a scintillator that is much bigger, because otherwise under diffraction mode you can bore the camera. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to use the Falcon 4 for MicroED. Please don't do that. Don't do that. It's bad. So you need a special camera, and you need a special package that we call GPUD, and it's for diffraction. So with that specific software, you will be able to have the continuous field, and you have a special C2 lenses for diffraction mode. And I will explain that a bit later. I think it's in the next. Oh, perfect. Okay. So
does it take like a week to change out?
Oh, no. It's very fast. No, it's like a few minutes. That the way you do it is like you insert, right now you have the Zeta 16M, the regular Zeta. If you want to create that, you can change the Zeta for the Zeta D. So the way you do it is you have both cameras in there, mounted in the scope. So you have, when you want to do MicroED, you insert the Zeta D, and the Falcon 4 is not there. And you do all the work with the Zeta D. When you are done with MicroED, the Zeta D is out, you insert the Falcon 4, you come back to the regular mode, no diffraction, and you can start already doing whatever you want with single particles. So it's very fast. Yeah. So this is the typical GPU interface you will get with GPU-D, okay? So as you can see, continuous still, so you are collecting all the time, continuously diffraction patterns coming from that specific crystal. Usually for minus 6070 to plus 6070. So that's how it works. So again, one crystal, usually 3 minutes, and it's done. And this is the package we need to have. So there are some tweaks in between the regular GPU and this package here, okay? So the Citadel camera, as I say, is optimized for diffraction application. So you have much more accuracy and sensitivity than the regular Zeta. It's compatible with single particle analysis, so you don't need to have the two Zeta. You can get the Citadel, and with the Citadel, you can do single particle analysis plus MicroEM. And again, it's compatible with the Falcon 4. That is very important because you still need to have the direct electron detector in there. So the GPU-D, again, data acquisition very easily for MicroED. You have a modified beam stop that is very important for MicroED because you don't want to fry your camera in there. So you have an optimized C2SA aperture set, again, specifically for MicroED and diffraction. You have MicroED lens series, and you have the 90 degrees rotation projection system. So all those package is very important to have it if you want to do MicroED in this scope. So this is to go more into details regarding, differences in between the regular Zeta, like called the Zeta 16M, the one you have right now, and the Zeta D. And you can see the DQs here. Usually in theory, the DQ value is the maximum you can get is 1. It's impossible to get 1 with cameras, it's the reality. So the closer you can get is around 0.9, 0.something. So in this particular case, you can see in blue is the Zeta D. It's already over 0.6, so it's almost 0.7. And the Zeta 16M is only 0.4. So you can see that Zeta D is totally designed to work very, very well with MicroED requirements. Differences in between, diffraction spots between the Zeta D, much more sensitivity versus the regular Zeta. So again, if MicroED is something you want or you are planning to do in this instrument in the near future, and I think you are, please think about this MicroED package, because I think that will be very, very helpful. Otherwise, and I know people are trying to do MicroED with crazy, packages like, oh, I have the Glaciers or the Falcon 4 and I have the Cryos with the Falcon 4, I don't have any protection, and I will do MicroED. And I was like, no, you don't want to do that because can be dangerous, and you don't want to break your $1 million camera. So be careful with that. Okay, some examples of MicroED. Tau peptide, lysozyme. The TGF is coming now. We have the silanase. We have the tau-mytin coming as well later on. We have the trypsin as well. We have the proteinase K, and we have the thermolysin. So those are very, very cool examples. And as you can see here, as I said before, it's a complete Turkey solution. So let me back there. You have 2-in-1. You can do MicroED, you can do single particle in your Glaciers. So you don't need to go to the synchrotron or do anything else. Yes.
How's the reason for using that?
For the crystals? Oh, the electrons, they can, let me get that correct. I think they can penetrate much softer the matter, like the synchrotron, the X-rays, or is the opposite way? I need to check that. But you have less radiation damage with electron diffraction versus crystallogram. And I will be back to you on that because I don't know if that's the way I explained to you right now is the other way around. I want to be sure I'm not saying stupid things to you.
Yeah, I think Natalia, that for that for
Yes,
MicroED, you need to have a very thin, so-called a tiny crystal. Otherwise, the electron
You are totally right. That's the reason the time, the size of the crystals is very small. It's in between 100 to 700 nanometers, and they need to be thin. Yeah, good point. Thank you, Euro. So this example, I like it. This is the granulin. It's only 29 kilodalton protein, and it's impressive to see, the differences in this table in between X-ray, XFEL, and MicroED. So So the size of the crystal for X-ray is 5 microns, is much bigger. You need 21 crystals of those size to be able to get 1.7 angstrom. With the X-FEL, you can use very small crystals, the same size as MicroEM, but you need to have over 80K crystals to be able to get to 2 angstrom. So it's very difficult to have that amount of crystals in hand. And MicroEM, you can use very small crystals, only 5, and you can get to 2.8 angstrom. Again, you can tell me, okay, it's not 1.7 as crystallography. I agree with you. But you know, crystallography sometimes can be very painful because sometimes you can get crystals, but they are very tiny, and the weight need to wait to have those crystals to go to 5 microns at least, if no more. And sometimes you need to wait weeks, months, it depends on the conditions. So, you know, for some particular projects, MicroEM can be maybe the solution for your problem, you know?
People use it for screening.
MicroEM for screening before going to the synchrotron?
No, like, you know, sometimes we get these granular crystals.
Yes.
And the decision to work it out or not is
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. Very good point there. Yeah. Okay, so I can see I have 3 questions in the chat. If you don't mind, guys, I will keep going and I will answer the questions on the chat later. If you have any important question right now, like you are dying to ask, please, if you can unmute yourself and ask me right now before I'm going with the selective energy filter. Nobody's dying with any question? Okay, good news. Okay, yeah, I will go with the selectives then. So what is the selectives? The selective is the very new energy filter, like Thermo developed over a year ago, quite new. So how the selectives or how the energy filters in general work. So I can spend 1 hour on only this particular slide. And believe me, I don't have the time and I don't want to bore you with these filters, but long story short, it's like you are producing the electrons, and those are the guys in green coming from the defect. And let's imagine for a moment, like all the electrons you are producing, they have the same energy. It's not totally the reality, but let's imagine that. When those electrons react with your state, with the sample, you are generating inelastically scattered electrons. And those are the noisy electrons. And those are the guys, like they are yellow and red in this image. You don't want to have those electrons in your image because they will produce, you know, noise, background, and they will not give you any signal. So how you remove them? Using the selective energy filter. So you have an energy sleeve, like it's a physically opening aperture, and you can select how much you want that opening to be open. 5 EB, 10 EB, or 20 EB, okay? So after selecting that opening, only the best electrons, they will go and they will go into your micrograph, into your image. So you can increase dramatically the signal to noise ratio because everything in EM is signal to noise ratio. If you cannot see the particles, you won't be able to do any data analysis, you won't be able to do anything at all. So increasing the contrast and the signal to noise ratio is very, very important. So we did studies in the R&D thermophaser, and we realized going to 20 EB to 10 EB for the opening can make a very important difference, and I will show you data on how that works. But going from 10 EB to 5 EB is almost the same. And working with a very tiny sleeve is a bit more trickier, you know, in terms of alignments and tuning of the selectives. So highly, we recommend you guys, if one day you have the energy filter here in the Glaciers, to use the 10 EB, you know, because that will be very easy for you to use, and it's less tuning like with the 5 EB. So stability, as you know, selectives or, you know, every single, I will say energy filter, they can be very picky with temperature variation. So the selectives is 10 times more stable than other energy filters in the market with temperature and other variations. And this is a typical example. In the graph here, you can see we did all the alignments and tunings at the beginning of the data collection session, and we did anything else for 300 hours and look at the stability of the selective. This was done in the factory. And everyone was like telling me, oh yeah, well, guys, maybe we are cheating because it's a factory in thermofisher, it's very stable environment, blah, blah, blah. In theory, it's the opposite. We have plenty of people visiting the factory, closing doors, opening doors, talking around, it's a mess. So, but to justify all this, we asked one customer site to send us the same graph in their site. And this is the results we get. So again, super stable. This is coming with a Cryos, Falcon 4, and Selectris combo. But it's going to be very, very similar to the one we get to the Glaciers one day to decide to go with a Selectris. So we did both testing, Cryo, Selectris, and Falcon 4. With Glaciers, Selectris, and Falcon 4, we have data for both. In this particular example, I also went with the Cryos, the one I have in hand right now, unfortunately. But I reached out to the factory and I asked them before coming here, and the difference is going to be minus plus 1.5 EB. So it's almost the same graph. But if I can put my hands on those graphs, I will send you to do, because the system you are having here is the Glaciers. So I will like to show you the real graph with the Glaciers. But again, super stable. If you combine the Selectris with Falcon 4, the DQE of this camera is very, very, very good. It's almost 1. You can go over 300 plus movies in an hour, 240 frames a second. So it's very, very fast. You can go the EER, and this is a very efficient compression that can help a lot with data collection and data transfer. And this EER is highly compatible with Relion, Cryospar, iMod, different softwares for data analysis. So again, a very good camera with a very good energy filter. B factors. Probably you are familiar with B factors. And again, I can spend another hour probably in this slide. If you are crystallographers or you have some experience with crystallography, B factors are very, very important. For Cryo-EM, B factor is a bit more different. The B factor is a measure of the optical capabilities of your microscope and camera, but there are different factors and parameters that can play in the B factor. And it's a very complicated measurement because it's not only the instrument and the camera, like they can make the B factor better as well as the sample. Sometimes if you have a very thick sample in that scope, the B factor can a bit change. So tons of different parameters playing around. I am giving an example in this graph in between comparing the Cryos with the Selectris, the Falcon 4, in green versus the Cryos and the Gatan K3 camera. And you can see the differences in the factor, 84 versus 50. So the lower the B factor, the better for you guys, because you will need to collect much less particles to be able to reach the same resolution. So for example, if you are using the Cryos Selectris Falcon 4, you only need to collect 60K particles to be able to get 1.9 angstrom. With the Cryos and the K3 camera, you will need to collect over 1 million particles to get the same resolution. So again, this microscope, the Glaciers, will be used for different faculty members, different labs, even external users, I don't know. So you want to be as efficient as possible. So you don't want to waste time and you don't want to collect 2 days or 3 days on the same sample. You can only get the same resolution in 1 day or even in a few hours because you need to be as efficient as possible. So B factor, very important to keep that in mind. I will show you some results because this is the most beautiful part, guys. I am so excited to show you this. They are out of the oven. They are literally out of the oven results. So this is coming from the Glaciers, the same system you have here, with the Selectris and the Falcon 4. So you don't have the Selectris yet, okay? But something to think about in the future. 1.7 angstrom resolution with apoferritin. And again, apoferritin is the benchmark protein for single particle analysis. It's a very stable protein, 500 kilodalton. You can tell me, oh, this is the easy peasy example, Natalia. Show me something more challenging. Here you are. I show you something a bit more challenging. It's the proteosome. And again, B factors, very, very important. Proteosome, again, quite easy sample, 700 kilodalton, quite big, soluble. But you can see the differences in between no Selectris and filter before comparing with the 20 EB opening in the energy filter and the 10 EB opening. So we did these tests in the factory, and we saw, like, okay, we collect the same number of particles without selectors and with selectors and different openings. You can see the resolutions go from 2.3, 2.2 to 2.1, the same number of particles. And the B factor is a huge difference. So for example, if you want to get 2 angstrom resolution, you will need to collect over 300K particles with the selective 10 EV versus 1 million particles with the selective 20 EV. So I told you between 20 and 10 is a huge difference. And it's almost impossible to do if you don't have the selective energy filter. You will need to collect millions and millions of particles. Okay, so something again to keep in mind. I'm getting there, and I will show you much more challenging samples. So this is the GABA receptor, 200 kilodalton membrane protein. Again, a very important target for cancer diseases and drug discovery. So we did the same experiment, no energy filter versus the 10 EV energy filter. And you can see you need to collect over 100K particles to get a 2.8 angstrom versus less than 100 to get a 2.4 angstrom. And again, better resolution with less particles. Glaciers with selectors and Falcon 4. This is a GPCR protein. So again, membrane protein, very important, all the GPCR family for you guys and for all drug discovery and for all pharmaceutical companies and academia. So only 150 kilodalton. This is a typical micrograph you will get with the Glaciers, selectors, Falcon 4. The selectors is important to increase the contrast. But again, don't forget, you already have the Glaciers and the Falcon 4. And even without the selectors, you will be able to reach very good resolution. But I wanted to show you the differences with the selectors, in the near future, you maybe can get that. So again, very, very pretty map, very good resolutions. Let's go with more difficult samples. This is a kinase, 85 kilodalton, very high resolutions. Glacier selectors, Falcon 4. Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin was obtained with the Glaciers selectors, Falcon 4 at 3.4 angstrom resolutions. And it's a very tiny protein. It's only 64 kilodalton. And this is human hemoglobin. It's very heterogeneous and very flexible. You probably are already aware with Gabe Lander and all his work or a script using an Artica, that is very similar to the Glaciers, optically speaking, and using a K2 camera, no filters, nothing. And it's able to obtain very, very high resolutions with that machine. He was using hemoglobin, but not human hemoglobin. So I want to emphasize that the resolution here looks worse than the one published with the Lander lab, but it's not the same hemoglobin, okay? So something to keep in mind. To summarize the data, so apoferritin 1.7 with the Glaciers, Falcon 4, and selectors, cyclin, a kinase at 85 kilodalton at 2.5, the GABA receptor at 2.4, the proteosome at 2.1, the hemoglobin at 3.4, and the GPCR at 2.6 angstroms. So let's compare the tiny bit, because you don't have the selectors right now. And maybe you are a bit panicky. What can I do without the selectors right now? So don't panic, not yet, because you can get very high resolutions already. So for example, in this particular example, I comparing the Tundra, like it's a entry-level microscope at 100 kV, with the Glaciers, without the selectors and with the selectors, okay? So same samples, you can get the GABA and the nanobodies at 3.4 angstroms in the Tundra versus 2.8 in the Glaciers without the selectors and 2.4 with the selectors. So it's a difference, but something to keep in mind. The resolutions already without the selectors are already quite good. Proteosome, Tundra, 3 angstroms, Glaciers without the selectors 2.3, and Glaciers with the selectors 2.1. And apoferritin 2.6 with the Tundra, the Glaciers without the selectors 2, and the Glaciers with the selectors 1.7. Okay. Let's move and let's go for the Cryo selectors and Falcon 4 results. I know you don't have a Cryo at this moment in this location, but you have access to Cryogenesis quite close in Purdue. So I wanted to show you some out of the other very exciting results with the Cryos, and something you will be able to do in Purdue. So apoferritin, again, benchmark protein. And every single time I look at this video, blows my mind. This is a 1.2 angstrom resolution of the apophyrogen. And you will be able to see right now in this Zoom in this video, water molecules, hydrogens, and oxygen. To be honest with you, when I started doing cryo-electron microscopy almost 15 years ago, I was developing fish. So I am that old, to be honest. I don't want to think about that. So I never thought in my entire life, like I will be able to see water molecules, hydrogens, and oxygens coming from a Cryo-EM map. And I was a crystallographer when I did my PhD. So when I started doing Cryo-EM, it was globology. We call that globology because it was like 15, 20 angstrom was a blob, okay? Right now, we can get a 1.2 angstrom. I mean, it's impressive. Another with the cryos is the proteosome without the energy filter and with the energy filter. So without the energy filter, it's like 2.02. It's not bad at all already. But with the energy filter, it's like 1.87. And some people can argue, oh, between 2 and 1.87, it's not that much differences in resolution. But when you are at this kind of level, this kind of differences in between 2 and 1.87 can make a difference. I'm telling you that. So can be important. The GABA, again, very high resolutions with the cryos, very beautiful maps. You can already see a small compound and you can really see the residues in the epitopes in those maps. We are working with a small sub 100 kilodalton proteins. For example, 52 kilodalton extractability. In the cryos, with the Citadel and the Falcon 4, 1.7 angstrom. To be honest with you, 2, 3, even 4 years ago, if someone will talk to me and ask me when I was in NCI, the director of the 2 labs, and I have 60 projects with 45 PIs. And some of those PIs will ask me, oh, Natalia, I have a tiny, tiny protein around 60, 50 kilodalton, and I was like, get out of here. I cannot do anything for you guys. It's so tiny. Right now, look at that. 52 kilodalton extractability. We can do it at 1.7 angstrom. So impressive. Human hemoglobin, again, don't forget, very heterogeneous and very flexible. 2 angstroms in the cryos with Celestis and the Falcon 4. And even with very tiny membrane proteins, as the SARS-CoV-2, 62 kilodalton, or even ion channel, 60 kilodalton, you can see it's like 2.1 and 2.5. So again, very, very impressive. So we like to call this internally the power of 3, because we have the cryos, the glaciers. You can combine that with selected energy filter and the Falcon 4, and you can get atomic resolutions. So it's very, very good. So I will move a bit more about what can be done and how Cryo-EM can be important for you guys for SBDD. And I know you have plenty of faculty in this group doing, because you are a medical college, obviously, so you are doing, drug discovery and cancer diseases related discoveries. So I think it's important for you to understand how Cryo-EM can play a role in this particular pipeline. So, for example, single particle analysis is very important for target discovery. So target identification, structure-based, obviously, and SARS development. MicroEM is very, very important as well for medical chemistry and lead optimization and lead identification. So again, single particle MicroEM can be very, very important for drug discovery in that pipeline. Some examples, how Cryo-EM is impacting drug discovery. For example, tons of examples with GPCRs. Plenty of GPCR structures are coming more and more nowadays by Cryo-EM single particle analysis. We have the GABA receptor. Again, asymmetric and symmetric GABA receptors coming using single particle analysis. You have plenty of kinases, the enters, ATRs, ATMs, like they are drug targets. Like historically, they are very difficult for crystallography, and right now can be done by Cryo-EM single particle. You have therapeutic antibodies, and I will show you some examples later in the presentation. You have ERP channels, again, very, very important for drug discovery. And obviously, you have protein synthesis and degradation. All those areas of expertise, Cryo-EM is playing an important role, a huge role. and it's becoming, more and more important, almost by the minute. I'm not exaggerating, it's crazy. So some examples here, this is the same sample, 2.7, 2.5, 2.1. So Cryo-EM is getting ready for lead discovery and drug compound discovery because the resolutions are getting better. Obviously, when you have a 5 angstrom resolution, for some particular or specific projects, can be enough to answer the biological question at 5 angstrom. But for drug discovery, you really need to put the resolution for what? You really need to get almost atomic resolution. So the strength of this technology is that you can see water molecule networks below 2.5 angstroms. You can ambiguous tracing of the backbone and most side chains already at that resolution. You have challenges as well with Cryo-EM, as you know. Low molecular weight, that could be a challenge, and it's getting better and better with the scopes and the energy filters and the cameras, but it still can be a challenge. Ice thickness can be a challenge as well. You need to have a very good sample to be able to get good data, as you know. Sample homogeneity and concentration can be another challenge. But again, all those things are getting better and better because we have improvements in detectors for cameras, in data processing methods, throughput, it's getting faster and faster. So you can collect much more data in less time. And microscope optics, again, those are helping a lot with all this drug discovery. Some examples, and this is you already see some of these before, but with the Tundra, we be able to get epitope mapping because you don't need to go much lower than 5 angstroms to do epitope mapping. With the Glaciers, the microscope you already have in-house, you can go below 2.5 angstroms on a fairly regular basis. At that kind of resolution, you can already see water molecules, and you can do a very nice job with model building. So it's very cool. And obviously with the Titan cryos, like it's the ultimate resolution, and you can reach atomic resolutions. You can get 1.7, 1.9 angstroms, with different targets, and you can see hydrogens, atoms, ligand identification, interaction. It's very, very good. How Cryo-EM can help you with antibody therapeutics. Let me show you some examples. This is very impressive to take at this graph. Antibody therapeutics start already like more than 45 years ago. You don't believe this, but it was like very steady technique. It was not evolving very fast, But starting, 2007, 2009, 2010, when Cryo-EM started to have the first autoloader systems with the cryos, people realized, okay, this technique can really help, crazy help me with this kind of antibody therapeutics development. So nowadays, we have over 80 therapeutic monoclonal antibodies that are already working very well, mainly against cancer, autoimmune diseases, and infectious diseases. And it's, as you can see in the graph, it's getting exponentially growing up. And by probably 2025, we are expecting to have $300 billion in that antibody therapeutic, I would say, industry. So it's huge. Some examples right now. This is the CD20 with this rituximab, and it's commonly used in the treatment of follicular and B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphomas. Okay, so you can see, like, despite demonstrate clinical effectiveness of this drug, in vivo mechanisms, remain still unknown and could differ from one to another. So it's very interesting to see how Cryo-EM can benefit to understand much better this complex. Cryo-EM can provide you with new insights in previously and now structures for this CD20. Cryo-EM enable as well binding mode of antibody to the receptor, and this is very cool to see how this antibody in particular is binding to the CD20. Again, very interesting. Another example, bivalent antibodies. I don't know if you are familiar with those. They are very, very cool, and we have some examples for enhanced clinical effect. For example, the Herceptin or the Perjeta, both are binding the HER2. That is simple bivalent antibody that doesn't show any energy, And you know, you have this flexibility, like can be done by Cryo-EM single particle. Even if we don't like that much flexibility in Cryo-EM either, you know, but we are a bit more, we say less picky than crystallographers. So something can be done by Cryo-EM. Very pretty example, you know, these beautiful nanoparticles. Look at those beautiful nanoparticles. I love them. You know, I was working at Fritz with plenty of nanoparticles, and I love them. And this is a typical design for the RSV vaccine for this virus. And you can see, you know, different copies of the perfusion RSV protein F, all these beautiful things. And this is only negative stain. I only saw when you are by now negative stain. And even by negative stain already, you can get a low resolution reconstruction, you know, and we have a low resolution at Cryo-EM at 6.5 angstrom, like I even showed you right now. But again, something to keep in mind, Cryo-EM is very, very helpful technique for antibody therapeutics and nanoparticle development. And with that, I am done, guys. So I don't know if you have any questions here in the room, or otherwise I will go ahead and try to open the chat and answer those questions in the chat.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, first, I have this right. MicroEM, the salt concentration and the thickness noise stable factor.
No,
Right.
no, because you are doing all under refraction mode.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't care about that. Even for example, I had people like asking me, which is the best voltage to recommend for MicroEM? And because some people are like, I need to go to the trials to do MicroEM. You don't at all. Even I asked the same question to Tamir Conan, and the best voltage for MicroEM is between 120 dB and 200 dB. So with the Glaciers you have here, it's more than enough. And even because you are under refraction mode, it's not that much important what kind of voltage you are using in the microscope. So you don't need to go to the trials at all to MicroEM.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just give me a 1-minute spiel on EM in terms of tomography.
Oh yeah, I can show you have some data later on.
Okay. I just wanted to know, like, is it a completely good setup? Change the setup completely?
Oh yeah, and I can show you that. You need, first of all, you need to grow your cells, and it depends on the cells you are working on. You will need to grow your cells in the grid, and you cannot use copper grids because they are toxic for the cells. So you need to use gold grids. So that is a challenge sometimes. So let's see you are lucky and you have your cell very happily grow in your gold grid. You still need to freeze that using the diplomate, that's fine. But you need to be able to plot from behind. You cannot plot for both sides. You cannot plot from the front. So usually, we recommend, it's a way to do it with the diplomate, but it's a bit more challenging. We recommend to do maybe manual plungers sometimes because you are much more flexible. You will be able to plot from behind because otherwise the cell is not going to be happy. So, okay, one challenge, like it's a bit more complicated like single particle. After you have all that, you need to go with the grid and go to the aquilus, in this particular example, to do the lamellas, okay? So you need to mill, you know, the area you want to make that thin lamella to be able to go to the cryos. And right now you have the aquilus, and I have some slides that I can show you later on to do in particular, only individually, you know, how can work. So we have even the integrated like microscope right now in the aquilus. Like for example, because otherwise it's very difficult to know what are you targeting. So if you have the protein of interest with the fluorophore, can be a GFP order, and with the integrated like microscope, you can correlate your fixen with that area of interest, and you can do the lamella and the milling in that specific area. Okay. Once you have that done, you need to leave out the lamella and go to the cryos and start doing all the tomography data collection, like I explained in the first slide in my video, is not totally the same way like you are collecting single particles. Single particles, you usually go to the scope and you collect as much micrographs as you can until, okay? In tomography, you need to get a series of things, and usually you are collecting data as 0, 5, 10, 15, until all the way to plus 60 or plus 70, and again, all the way to minus 60, minus 70. So it's a bit more tedious. And again, everything is automatic. You don't need to do that manually. I tell you that so you can relax. But, you know, it's longer. Yes. Plus, when you are done with all that, So sample prep is a bit more difficult like single particle, and data collection is a bit more challenging to data analysis is another totally different matter. Right now with single particle analysis, we have plenty of software, like they are quite easy to use and to obtain 3D volumes, you know. With tomography, even if they are still in Tomo, IMO, to have different software that you can use, there are still much more steps like you still need to do manually. So the soft tomograph averaging, you need to have goal for fiducials. I mean, you know, it's a more challenging, you know, technique like single particle analysis. Of course, yeah. And I'm happy you are asking that because I can see you are interested in doing tomography and it's the way to do it. It's very cool to have the high resolution 3D volume with single particle or MicroEM, but you want to know what's going on with that exact protein in situ. So that's the way to combine both, you know, single particle and tomography. But it's, you know, the way to approach is more difficult. Yeah.
So anyone who has a question, feel free to unmute yourself to ask Natalia.
Yeah, you have any questions, please? I have 3 in the chat right now. I try to open the
I
chat.
pretty much answered to the question in actually chat.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I do have a question, Natalia. It's slightly technical, but I ask you anyway. So when you use the energy filter you mentioned, clearly that you can actually see a much better contrast in low defocus value, right? Clearly. Because
Yes, yes.
0.3, that's pretty low. Usually we can go up to like a 0.7, usually people, right? So the
Yes.
reason why you got the much better reconstruction simply because you can actually collect the data more low defocus value. That's more of the
Yes.
reason. Right?
Yes, so the energy filter will increase the contrast dramatically. And I don't know if let me back one of the image I had for the selectors. You will be able to see I have one image or several images to show you the difference in contrast. Let me back to that because it's quite impressive to see the micrographs. And you are almost there are not those guys. They are almost
close to the focus value, right? Focus, right?
Yes, yeah, it's very close to the focus. Let me see if I can find that image because I'm pretty confident I have it here and I would like to show you that again. Here you are.
Yeah, that's a point,
So
point,
this is
38 micron, right? Yeah.
Yes, so in the top thing, I don't know if you can see it, I will move that here. In the top, you can see it's without the selectors, so you don't have any energy filter. It's like 0.47 microns defocus, and you can not see any particles. It's very difficult to see the particles. When you have the selectors, like the bottom, you know, micrograph is like 0.38 microns defocus, and it's even, you know, closer to the focus or to true focus like the other guy. But you with the selectors, you will be able to see, and you can see the particles very well. So this is the kind of difference you can get. And again, you are totally right, Juro. You can collect data with the selectors much closer to focus. So all the high resolution data will be there.
Yeah, but why is it that for this contrast is from the low frequency information, right? Why
Yes.
is it using low frequency information then?
Yeah, you are right. But you know, you are selecting the best. That's the reason I in this image you can see in this slide with the selectors you are removing from your image all the inelastically scattered electrons, like they are the guys, like they are noisy electrons, and you don't want to have them in the micrograph because obviously they are increasing the noise. The ones you want, they are the ones like they are the best electrons, like they are not inelastically scattered, and those are the ones providing you with the signal versus the noise. So the selectors is helping you to increase dramatically the signal to noise ratio, and that's the reason you can collect data much close to
The focus
focus.
value.
Yes, because you will have the selectors and you will be able to see the particles. Yeah.
Thanks. Anyone else? If not, thank you very much for attending that seminar for the Friday afternoon. Thank you, Natalia, for the wonderful talk.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Yuka.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and hope you guys enjoy a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.